too far back.
Yeah, that could be the end of you.
You're on quite the incline.
Yeah,
We're both just about to roll off this. If we get 2 more beers in us, this would be a dangerous seat.
Thank God we only have 2 more beers. It'll keep us safe.
And we only have 2 more beers because, unfortunately, this is the end of the trip. Idaho Send, day 4, was our toughest day yet.
For sure.
But also very rewarding and reflective, and we both got some time to just stand on the water while the other person fished and just kind of think about the opportunities that we've had on this trip and soak in some of this beauty. We're sitting on an absolutely gorgeous vista. We've got a great little campsite in the middle of the wilderness. Nobody else is going to be up here.
Nobody else.
We are wrapping things up here.
We are off the grid. There's elk sign all over this camp. So it's just, there's tracks and fresh elk poop. It's just, you really know you're out and away from stuff when the wildlife is here. We haven't seen that at any of our other camps. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. A lot of reflection did take place. You know, Jake and I put so much stock into these trips, and we pin a lot of our hopes and motivation to get through regular life, to get to come out and do these adventures. It's crazy. You get 1 week out of your 52 that you just are like so invested in, and you takes up so much of your thought, and then it's here and gone that fast.
Yeah.
So, but before I get too sappy, it was totally worth it because it was a freaking blast.
Yeah. And we got to start at the very beginning of the day with probably our least exciting breakfast so far, because we finally had to break into the sausage patties.
I know, we'd had leftover meat from all of our delicious meat-based dinners that we'd just been carrying recycling into the next meal. We finally had to break out the old Bob Evans breakfast sausage, but still a banger breakfast.
Still a delicious breakfast.
I mean, if you're going from a 10 to a 9, it's still a dang good breakfast in my book.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Scranton 9, but
what'd you say?
Office joke.
Oh, yeah.
Classic. Right over the
Right
head.
over the head.
Somebody out there will get it.
Somebody will.
Most people will get it, actually.
Not me. I live under a rock.
Oh, but man, we had this. So we started off with a nice and hearty breakfast, per usual.
Yes.
And, of course, before we threw the waders on, we had to go check out Murphy's Glory Hole.
Oh, it's not mine. It's yours.
Man.
It's ours.
You've named it so.
Yeah.
So that's why it's yours.
It
But
is what it is.
we didn't even wader up again. We knew that we had to go test the flies out one more time at that spot.
Yep.
And sure enough, I mean, I missed a few fish. I hooked up to a really nice, probably 16, 17. And Murphy had a nice little morning.
Yeah, I caught a couple, so that was cool.
Yeah, it was a great start to the day.
Great start.
We set the tone thinking like, oh, it's going to be another easy day. Every time
sure.
every time we cast into a pool, we know we're going to get a few fish.
We're going to hook up to a fish on a streamer, and boy,
we were wrong.
We were wrong. But we were honestly juked by Mother Nature and the fish that she was going to give us.
Yeah.
So we fished the sweet spot that we camped at for night 2 and 3. We fished that again in the morning, caught a couple fish. So we're riding high. We get geared up, pack away all the stuff, drive up the river to our next spot. We find this enormous, beautiful boulders, very similar to what we have fished this week. It's kind of a quote-unquote pattern that we have picked up along the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Seems like you get these big runs that come down and scour out a pool underneath a boulder. And it seems like if you could get on the right swing on that, you're pretty much guaranteed at least a streamer bite.
Yep.
Sometimes more, depending on how stacked that run is. But we get to this spot, and I had caught a fish previously at the first,
I hadn't landed anything yet.
Jake
for the
hadn't
day.
landed anything, so it was
He was
Jake,
gracious enough to give me the spot.
It was Jake's turn to get down in there. So I'm up on the road with the camera. We get Jake
and the long lens.
the long lens, so we're zooming in. I mean, like, count your nose hairs kind of close. So Jake ends up crossing this river spectacularly nimbly like a cat, where I was stumbling through it the whole way, but that's neither here nor there. Jake gets across this river, and we thought we struck gold.
Oh my God. I literally swung the streamer out. I wanted to be smart with it. I swung it out maybe 5 yards in front of me, and wham. Nice cutthroat. Immediately a 14-incher on the board.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, first drift. This is about to be stupid.
About to be wild. So I filmed Jake fish a little bit more. Not a whole lot happens. Did you hook up with another one?
I caught
when
one
was up there?
other. I caught a small one, and I
Yeah.
lost another smaller one. Probably both like 12s.
Nothing gigantic, but so
Yeah.
I decided to come on down and get across the river, and then we proceed to fish the crap out of this hole. And
Like every angle, every fly.
angle, every drift, we tried different flies, dry flies, different types of streamers, different lines with those different streamers. We were trying sinking tip, floating line. I mean, we were doing everything we could, and it just wasn't happening. So, like much in our fashion that we have had this send, Jake and I were much better, and we said, okay, it's time to go.
We still probably took a little too long at that spot, but we definitely were like, okay, this is getting silly. We got to get out of here.
Yes. And mind you, this morning is very cold compared to, I think, the other mornings we've had. It was
the coldest.
It was exceptionally cold this morning, into the 30s. So, just things were our working theory is that, oh man, it's just really cold. Stuff's just not happening yet. We need some sun. So we go to the next spot.
Nothing.
So then it's like, okay, well, we start driving around. We go lower into the water because, let's take a step back. We go to way high up in the drainage. So we are fishing very small stuff. And we fish a couple spots that look decent that probably should have fish, and they didn't. So it's like, you know what? Screw it. We need to just go back to what was working. We need to go to big water. So we make our way back down to way low in the system. I mean, it's this river here at this point is gigantic. It'd take 3 times to cast across this whole thing. I mean, it's just a very big river. And as we were getting down further and further, the gradient was really high. So it was a lot of really wide, fast, shallow stuff. Didn't end up panning out. We checked a few spots, and it's just like, man, none of this looks good. So Jake had a great idea. Let's go back to our roots. Let's hit that stretch of water that's been working for us, but let's just find a different spot. So we've been eyeing this cliff face. We've driven past it how many times?
4 or 5.
A bunch of
We've been
times.
up and down this whole creek river system a lot.
Yeah, so we find this. We see this spot. This was the same spot where I thought the woman was dead the other day, curled up on the ATV in a super strange fashion.
Just taking a nap.
Yeah.
Neither here nor there.
Neither here nor there. We finally get there, and it looks pretty freaking cool. But so, at this point, I started the trip very much in the boat of like, I'm completely satisfied with catching or not catching a fish, and I usually am. But today it felt off, and I felt like I was really working hard and wasn't catching stuff, and was just like, man, I don't really know how to process this. I don't want to end.
I'm watching Murphy.
I'm having a crisis. A little bit.
Have a little bit of an inner fight. So he's being very quiet. He's very much like, I gotta catch a fish. I can just see it on his face.
Yeah.
And so I'm behind the camera because I want him to get his fish. I'm content, like it is what it is at this point.
Yeah.
I'm set on just riding it out, and I get behind the camera and I'm filming Murphy, and he makes some fantastic streamer strips through this deep pool and nothing. Maybe one hit, but could have been a rock. And I can just see the frustration boiling. Every time that his line like catches on his reel or something, I can see like a little further and further into madness. He's descending.
Yeah, I felt pretty low, but I mean, granted, it's hard to feel really too terrible because you're in the Idaho backcountry and you get to see stuff like this.
Yeah.
So hard to beat it. But either way, I didn't want to end my trip on a bunch of frustration, and I would really like to have one more to sort of polish it off. and
It took a while.
It took a long time. We had to work through a lot of water. Jake and I
It
were
took so long that I was so hot from lugging around the camera that I literally had to go back up to the Jeep. I changed into shorts and I was wet wading just to enjoy the water. I just wanted to be like one with the water while Murphy was doing his fishing thing.
Yeah.
I had pretty much given up all fishing. I was like, whatever, I'm cool with just hanging out and letting him do his thing until he gets a fish.
Yeah.
And then what happened was I'm filming on the long lens and I have the screen flipped so that I can see what I'm filming. I'm talking, I'm giving like a little monologue to the camera, and I can see Murphy behind me from a distance in the screen, and all of a sudden I see his rod stand up, and I'm like, and I'm talking about how Murphy's having a little bit of a time. I can tell he hasn't said anything, but I know that he needs a fish to feel good about this trip.
Yeah, I wanted to polish off one more. And sure enough, we kept working our way downstream, plugging away at it, and I was thinking to myself, if I'm not going to catch anything, I would like to not catch something while swinging a streamer. Because we tried plugging away with dry flies. Jake was taking shots. I was taking shots. Nothing was happening. These fish were denying our flies. They're not even looking at it. We were swinging streamers through good stuff. It wasn't happening. But we finally got to this one, same thing, big boulder, run downstream of this big boulder that scoured out a little pocket, and managed to plug away 2 of them that Jake was able to capture on the big long lens.
Ultra long.
From a quarter mile away or more. I mean, Jake was like a speck down the river.
I'm just like playing in the water.
Jake's like splashing around like a kid playing in the water, and I'm having this crisis. But we end up plugging away 2 more, and we got it, and it was great. And Jake came down and took some swings with the streamer, but I think that was really the only 2 fish in there that wanted to play the game.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm good. Jake's good.
We start walking out.
Let's hike out, because we knew we were going to have a long drive to get to.
Yeah.
Well, not exactly this spot, but we'll get into that.
Yeah. From where we were fishing to here now is probably an hour and a half.
Yes, it was a long way up.
And it's 15 miles, 14
Yes.
miles in an hour and a half, to give you reference.
So we really had to take our time. The roads were not in great condition, but we found our way up here, and it ended up being okay.
Yeah.
So as we're walking out, completely content, we happen to see this little pocket of fish just sipping.
Yeah.
Come
I'm
on,
like,
sipping.
I'm looking at the water. I'm like, something's breaking weird there. And I'm watching more. And I'm like, those are fish rising. And we're right here. And Murphy just tied on a fresh October caddis.
Yeah.
So it's probably worth a few drifts to maybe get me one more last fish. Murphy had his 2.
Yep.
He felt complete. I hadn't caught one pretty much all day except for the morning, but I still felt good. But it never hurts to get a closing fish.
No, it doesn't. And we have, for a couple trips now, Colorado and Oregon, we have been wanting to get a very zoomed in shot of a dry fly eat. So we've got this really nice, slow, flat section where fish are consistently rising. It's like, man, this is the time to get that shot.
We've got the 70 to 350 lens slapped on there.
So we can
Ultra zoom.
really get close in on that. So I step behind the camera, Jake steps in line. We set a GoPro up just to make sure we've got all sorts of perspectives. We really lined up the shot.
Yeah,
for
I mean,
this
the
one.
fish were clearly not going anywhere.
No.
It was like 7 fish that were just sipping in different spots.
Yeah, so it's just Jake approaches it quartering downstream like he should, and he starts plugging away at the closer fish, and I'm able to get nice and zoomed in. I can track his fly, and one but a few casts, he makes a nice one, whips it straight out, length, the whole leader straight, and it was just really pretty
that's
cast.
The drift.
That's the drift. Comes through. I've got that fly right on the crosshairs, and then trout comes up.
And I mean, I gave that fish a long time. Like, I watched it eat, I watched it underwater, and then I set the hook, because we've been pulling a lot of dry fly hooks from fish.
Yes.
And so I was really trying to be like a proper patient dry fly fisherman. And sure enough, it actually works.
Paid off.
Which is a bummer, but it works. You have to be patient.
Yeah, you got to be patient.
And it ended up being a really nice,
solid
fat fish. And that was a great feeling. And then I was like, well, let's see if we can get it one more time just to make sure that we got it.
Yes, yeah, and it wasn't just let's do it one more time. Let's do it one more time, but in slow motion.
Yeah.
So Jake made some presets for to just ease up the burden of trying to figure out how exactly we wanted to film various situations, and we had a preset for slow motion stuff. So it doesn't quite film in perfect 4K.
Yeah, and so the camera can't do 4K 120 or 4K 60. It can only do 4K 24 or 60. Or 24 or 30, excuse me. But we scaled down to 1080 in the hopes that we can at least take a portion of this clip and scale it up into a 4K video.
Yes. And so we slapped the slow-mo mode on there, and then
Murphy told me which line they were eating in.
Jake nails the cast.
Fish eats, and I
Got
set
it all.
the hook nice and slow, and
got it all on film again.
bring another one in.
So
Perfect wrap up.
Is a perfect wrap up to our fishing adventures. And at that point, we're like, okay, let's go.
Yeah, because we had a long drive.
Yeah.
And we were both skip lunch because we wanted to make sure that we maximize fishing before heading up to our campsite. So we packed up the truck. We got some cool shots on the way out, and took the long drive up to where we are now, which ideally would have been a little bit of a longer drive, another 5 miles in. But they gate the entrance for elk season, which is not listed. Must be something new. It looked like a fairly new sign.
Yeah.
So yeah, starting October, they close off this road to the overlook spot to make sure that people aren't in the elk habitat and tearing up wildlife. So it's a bummer.
Unfortunately, conservation saved us from camping at a good spot. But I mean,
I'd say we're camping at a good spot.
I think we're camping at a good spot. I'm not too worried about it. We're happy about it. It's a fantastic view here.
We found this little offshoot on the trail, and we're like, we'll go take a look. Sure enough, back up the truck, and it's just like,
dang,
look at where we are.
That's
We're
pretty
on
nice.
this rock face, like sandy rock face, overlooking the valley. We've got the river below us. We can see the road, and we're about 4 miles in from the main road, which we're going to be leaving out of tomorrow morning. So a great spot to be at for the night. We'll have a nice warm evening. It's been like mid 60s. It was pretty toasty. He's in short sleeves.
Up at the top of this hill, it is just very pleasant. So
yeah, we have stunning views. We've got aspens across the way, changing color. Some of the pines are shifting. It's
gorgeous.
It looks fake, to be honest. Like if you look through this,
fake, Jake, the whole every inch of Idaho that I've seen doesn't look real.
Yeah, and people always who are from Idaho always say Idaho sucks and Idaho's ugly, and that's just because they don't want Californians to come to Idaho. And I mean, I can't blame them. It's called the Gem State. People sleep on Idaho. This is one of the prettiest states, definitely top 5 in the U.S.
It seems like every time we do ascend, it just gets prettier and prettier, and this country is just jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
And you'll see it throughout our montage of content we plan on dropping from this whole thing, but it's just... You feel really privileged to get to see this landscape, and it makes you crave this kind of adventure. It really is a special thing.
Yeah. And I know Murphy and I both had our moments on the water today where, we just took a moment to look around. Murphy was telling me he was filming me for a little bit, and then he's like, and then I just kind of looked upstream for a while. And I was like, that's what you got to do when you're out here.
I spent a lot of time just staring today, trying to soak it in. So much stuff happens so fast out here, and there's so much beauty, and it's almost impossible to process it all quickly enough so that you can retain that memory in a perfect image. Yeah. It just happens so fast, and man, just to take a few minutes and just put the rods down, step away from the camera, and just stare, that's good. It's really good.
We have had a heck of a trip here on the Idaho Sand. We've got Mondo cutthroats like 16, 17 inchers. We've caught them on the dries, streamers, what have you. We caught both of our first ever bull trouts, which is monumental for our fishing experience. That's something
for
that
sure.
neither of us are ever going to forget. I
No.
kept my fly that I actually broke off today, the cone
Yes.
head that I caught my first bull trout on, and Murphy saw it flying through the air, saw it splash in the water. He's like, go get your fly. And then
right
after
there,
that
it's right
point, I
there.
was like, okay, I'm locking that away. That's going to go in a little shadow box with my frame picture of my bull trout. But
Yes.
it has been an absolute gorgeous adventure. We have loved Idaho, and it's been a pleasure
Yeah.
spending this time with you, brother.
Amen. I couldn't couldn't think of another way I'd want to spend this week. So it is awesome, man.
Yeah. Thank
good
you guys
stuff.
so much for following along. Hope you enjoyed this year's Send series, the Idaho Send, and we will catch you guys next year on the next one.
The next one.